Hey everyone, just want to talk to you today about a film I saw last week, Damien Chazelle's First Man. This is the third film by Oscar winner Damien Chazelle, his first and second being Whiplash and La La Land. I have talked about each of them on different occasions on this channel, and I've been looking forward to this one for almost a couple of years now, so let's just get into it. Before I do, I just want to quickly talk about another film I saw in the same weekend, Bad Times at the El Royale. It's getting a lot of criticism, but I genuinely liked it. If you're into crime films, if you're into 60s style films, I highly recommend it. It has a great cast, great script, and it's just a very well made film. So, First Man, I was originally just going to see in a normal cinema, but I happened to be in DC last week, so I saw it in the Aerospace Museum. The Aerospace Museum has an IMAX theater, so I changed my plans and I saw it there. And if you're in the DC area or just happen to be just at the Aerospace Museum, I highly recommend going to it. Or if you're just near an IMAX theater, I highly recommend seeing it in an IMAX theater. But yeah, it's definitely worth seeing in IMAX. So this is a very different movie for Damien Chazelle in terms of style. His first two films are very traditionally shot. They have this old Hollywood style to them. There isn't a whole lot of handheld or shaky cam of any kind. Not really shaky cam, just any sort of movement in the camera, aside from like smooth cinematography. But this definitely has a lot more handheld, a lot of close-ups, more than Whiplash, and Whiplash is known for how many close-ups it has. And just the entire film has this grain to it, which makes it have this more immersive 60s feel to it, early 60s feel. Another thing I will say is something that always bugs me with movies is when a film is shot in, or takes place in older time, 50s, 60s, and they show news footage, television footage, anything like that. But the footage always looked really HD, and it just has some grain thrown over it. Like I recently saw The Conjuring, and there's a part where they film on an 8 or 60 millimeter camera, but then it looks like 4K resolution. So I'm happy to say that they definitely gave enough of a shit to actually make it look like it was shot in the 60s. And they did reuse a lot of news footage and radio broadcasts from the 60s, but you can tell when they shot it with modern actors like Jason Clarke or Ryan Gosling, they definitely cared enough to make it look like 60s footage. This film takes itself very, very seriously. This is spoilers, by the way. There are spoilers. The opening scene is Neil Armstrong, going into outer space, and it's done in this very, very serious way. You don't really see outside the ship at all. It's all inside the cockpit. 20 minutes in, there's a baby funeral. So it definitely takes itself in very, very seriously, which I can respect because this is a very serious film. I think this is the first major film about this event. I mean, there's been other realistic space exploration films like The Right Stuff, Apollo 13. But yeah, it takes itself very seriously, and this also is not a sci-fi. It has science in it, and it has some science fiction elements, but when you watch the film, you don't really get a sense that this is a sci-fi movie. It's not like Arrival or Blade Runner. And yeah, this is the sort of fall smart sci-fi movie. 2013 was Gravity, next year was Interstellar, then The Martian, then Arrival, then Blade Runner, now this. And yeah, this is definitely the least sci-fi of all of them, but no, it definitely fits in with the rest of them. The acting was great. There isn't a weak performance in the entire film. Ryan Gosling was great. It was definitely intentional, but he was very unlikable in a lot of it because of just how his mannerisms are and anything like that. Mrs. Armstrong, played by Claire Foy, who I haven't really heard of outside of this film, did great. She always looks like she's on the brink of a mental breakdown, even when she's like happy and playing with the kids and everything. Buzz Aldrin, played by Corey Stoll, I thought was done very well, even though he's in it for probably less than 10 minutes. I thought his performance was great, and I wish I saw more of him in it. Yeah, again, the aesthetic is very well done. There were some times where it got a little distracting, like the depth of field will be very out of focus, which of course was the intention, but sometimes it just came off as a little distracting, even slightly forced. And there is one sequence where they keep doing that Zack Snyder push zoom in, like a punch in, which again was also distracting. If I were to get rid of anything, it would probably be that. And yeah, the effects were great. There really isn't any complaints there. It definitely feels like footage from NASA, because the thing with the footage from NASA and Interstellar did this a little bit, a handful amount of shots, because Interstellar also did this, is the camera was always mounted to the ship. Because when you watch actual NASA footage, it's always very mounted, very stationary. There's no cinematic sweeping camera motions. There wasn't Interstellar, but with this, pretty much 100% of the footage in space outside of the actual moon landing was very stationary, very locked down, and it gave you a more immersive feel. There was one shot of a ship that looked CG. I mean, it wasn't super obvious, but it had this little glare to it that you could tell, but it wasn't really anything that would take you out of the movie. The rest of it was great. The music, well, not as good as La La Land or Whiplash, but those are music-oriented movies. It definitely was good for what it was. There was one part where they had to dock with a space station, and it had this like orchestra classical type feel to it, which I believe at this point is just pretty played out. Like it's not like Star Wars, which has orchestra elements. It just felt like old classical, and it didn't really do much for me. The moon landing scene was very, very well done. That's when the actual like cinematic sort of shots came from. I'd say the only thing, and this isn't really their fault with it, that I didn't love was when Ryan Gosling said one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It felt a little awkward coming from him because the entire movie, he's just very straightforward. I'm glad they did do it because, you know, it's historical and everything, but it just felt very obligatory. There's one piece of controversy that the film is getting that I should address is the flag planting. So early viewers of the film were very critical that the film didn't show them planting the flag. When I first heard about this, yeah, I thought it was dumb, but I will assure you that they did indeed show the flag, because some people are making it out to be that they didn't show the flag at all. The flag is indeed on the moon in the movie, but they just don't show it. And when I watched the film, it didn't really faze me at all. Honestly, it's not really that big a deal. I know some people who are avoiding the film entirely because of that, and I think it's kind of unfair to judge an entire film based on one thing that wasn't shown. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about First Man. Again, if you live around the DC area, I highly recommend seeing it in IMAX in the Aerospace Museum. I think that's the best place you can see it. Otherwise, I recommend seeing it IMAX or just seeing it at all. It's a very well-made film. The people who are making it gave a shit about the source material, and they handled it with great care. And yeah, if you've seen the film, let me know in the comments. And that's pretty much it. See ya.